so absurd. The things they say are so absurd that, I can't even share it here. The terrorism will come to an end. Has terrorism come to an end? Corruption. See, it's very important that we understand this particular point as an economist. In a capitalist economy, when every transaction has as its objective some profit, there is always incentive for corruption. Isn't it? If you're doing a transaction, what do you want to do it? You want to make a gain. Do you do it fairly? Yes, sometimes. But if you can't do it fairly, you'll do it unfairly. So corruption is built into the capitalist system. All transactions are for gain. Gain is the only objective. And therefore corruption is endemic, intrinsic to capitalism. Modi knows this because he has taken a lot of money, all these electoral bonds and all that. I'm not discussing now, not individually, but through the legislations. What is electoral bonds? Electoral bonds is an open invitation to corruption. You don't have to say who you are. You can give it to any party of your choice and nobody will know, except the government will know, but nobody else will know. Electoral bonds. So many things one can talk about, So, this entire exercise of the Modi government in demonetization was a disaster. What it did do, however, it hurt the people very badly. And I'll just give you one or two examples. In fact, I often go on our work to various places. Sometimes I get a taxi driver to drop me. And one taxi driver said that in the demonetization period, he had been on, duty about almost the entire month. He had some 15,000 rupees of the old 500,000 rupees notes with him. He had no time to go and change them. So for me, 15,000 rupees may be a small change. For the taxi driver, it's a month's income. That's how Modi wiped out a lot of small players. Small players in trade, in manufacturing. In other words, demonetization was not about black money. It was about destroying the small players and handing over more and more the economy to the big corporates. That is the agenda of demonetization. Which corporate stood in the queue, you tell me, to turn in his money? Which corporate lost his life waiting to pick up his deposit? You tell me. Extreme right-wing leaders are getting elected. It's a very serious thing. And not only in India. India, we are seeing it, suffering it for 10 years. But many other countries, you take Philippines, you take many other countries in the world. Right now you take Italy or you take the new right-wing leaders in many European countries. Look at the way after the Ukraine war began, look at how Scandinavian countries, which were earlier neutral and were social democratic, today they are lining up to join NATO. Denmark was always there, but Sweden, Norway, Finland, every one of them is rushing to join the Western Alliance. So it's a mixed world. There's a very tough battle going on. Capitalism has failed to solve problems, but socialism has not emerged as an alternative. This is the global context that we are in. Just to mention it in passing. Second, since 2008, for about 15 years, the global capitalist economy has not recovered and shown any serious growth. Pretty much stagnating, both in terms of, certainly in terms of employment, but even in terms of output, not much of growth. It's not just the pandemic. Pandemic made it worse. But after pandemic, there are 4 years, right? So even now, if you look at the data from various economies, the capitalist world economy is largely stagnating. Even when growth occurs, and growth occurs sometimes, employment does not increase. So there is a permanent state of mass unemployment in the Western world. And obviously it is much worse for the third world countries, which are, at the receiving end of the attacks by imperialism. So this is the global context, but our rulers in India under Modi have been eager to become junior partners of US imperialism. This is the challenge we are facing. So as junior partners of US imperialism, they are following all the policies that the US dictates, political, economic, military and so on. So this is the larger context in which our fight in the coming period has to deal with all this. So what has happened in these 10 years? Now the first point I want to make is that the Congress regime before that was also a neoliberal government. The Vajpayee regime, which was there for one term, was also a neoliberal government. So neoliberalism has been with us since 1991. It began in the 80s, accelerated, and we warned about it. The left warned about it as early as the time Rajiv Gandhi became Prime Minister after Indira Gandhi's assassination. We said even then that the new textile policy, new economic policy, all this is bogus, that it will land you in big trouble. And exactly as we said, this happened now. 30 years of neoliberalism has not generated either adequate growth or adequate employment or better living standards for the mass of our population. But history does not stand still because people don't keep quiet. What I'm saying is true, but we also know that while criticizing the government, we also mobilize people to fight for their rights. So our fight has yielded some fruits for the people. So some rights we have won. If you look at the UPA regime, for example, 2004 to 2014, in the first 4 years of the UPA regime, 4 to 8, I was telling Comrade Ramesh, see this afternoon, I was telling him, in 2004 general elections, Vajpayee went in with the slogan, India shining, Pormunda. But what did people say? India is not shining. So go home. We defeated the BJP, despite the Congress's very mixed role, but we forced the Congress into adopting certain decisions. This is what brought you the Right to Information Act. It brought you the National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. It brought you a Right to Education Act, a bit diluted, but still a Right to Education Act. And some years later, it brought you the National Food Security Act, also diluted. But these were victories that we basically, by mobilizing people, forced the Congress and bourgeois landlord governments to yield. So don't forget that at least under the Congress regime, which was very bad, and after 2008 when we quit with them over the issue of the US-India nuclear deal, it got much worse because 2009 to 14, Congress came back to power because of the NREGA, but went on to pursue ultra-neoliberal policies. Modi took over from there in 2014. Even to get the Congress to pass some legislations, we had to fight very hard. In fact, most of you will not have been following all this. I've written a text which I've given to Comrade Ramesh, but even that doesn't contain all these facts. 2013, we fought very hard for two important acts. One was the National Food Security Act. The other was what is called the Act LARR, Land Acquisition and kind of ensuring that peasants did not lose their rights. That LARR Act was a big fight that we led, and it enabled us to provide some protection to the peasantry against evictions of various kinds, rehabilitation and all that. We talked about this. Now, every one of those is being reversed. Congress was not willing to do all this, but we forced them to do it. But now all these are being reversed in the last 10 years. So what has happened in the last 10 years? In the 30-year neoliberal period, including Vajpayee's, from 91 to 2000, let's say up to 2014, about 20 odd years, we were able to fight and win some concessions for the working people. But after 2014, we have had a major battle on our hands because the Modi regime is finishing off everything, and unlike the Congress, it is even more ultra-neoliberal. There are three respects, 3 or 4, I'll mention them now, in which the Modi regime is much worse in terms of economic policy than even the Congress UPA regime. Congress UPA regime is bad, don't forget. Don't let, just because we have an India formation and we are trying to get rid of BJP, we will not forget what Congress was like in terms of its class policies. But for the moment, we can say that compared to Modi's regime, Congress looks better in terms of the track record of that 10-year period. So what did the Modi regime do? Why was it even worse? Let me just highlight a few points. One was even more strongly than the UPA government, the Modi government follows completely ultra-neoliberal policies. What does that mean? That means it won't even spend on welfare programs. Anywhere like what we could force the Congress to do so earlier, under the Modi regime, there are lots of schemes. Every day he announces a scheme. So a lot of propaganda is there. Today I was watching Doordarshan in the room for a little while, got sick of it because so much of lying constantly beamed through Doordarshan. But you could see all these schemes he announces. I thought about senior citizens, so I introduced an insurance scheme for them. Tears on his cheeks. Fraud. Complete atrocious lying politics. But if you look at the track record, he has not expanded any welfare scheme. On the contrary, he has cut back allocations for even the very limited welfare schemes that the Congress had been forced to accept because of our fight. Even that he has cut back. Second, if you look at the most important aspects, we thought about the Food Security Act and all that. The most important victory we said was the National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, NREGA. Modi has basically finished it off. Where is the NREGA now? Except, a state like Kerala where we are fighting and one or two other states, the government of India has been cutting allocation for MNREGA every year. Today, the allocation now is practically, in real terms, nowhere near what it should be. Similarly, while cutting welfare benefits for the poor, for the ordinary people, while cutting subsidies on three important items: food, fertilizer, energy. Three very important items. Even when in the international market, petroleum prices were going down, Modi raised excise duties to retain the high price levels. And he did it in a spectacularly evil way by raising surcharges and cesses, which did not have to be shared with states. So anti-federal and anti-people. These both features are consistently there in everything Modi has done, anti-federal and anti-people. So, on the taxation policy, what did Modi do?
Beautiful design. അതല്ലേ നിങ്ങളിപ്പോ ചിന്തിച്ചത്? ഇതേ മലബാർ ഗോൾഡ് ആൻഡ് ഡയമണ്ട്സ് ജെംസ്റ്റോൺ ഫെസ്റ്റിവൽ കളക്ഷനാ. വിലയെക്കുറിച്ചല്ലേ ചിന്തിച്ചത്? എല്ലാം മലബാർ ഡിസൈനും ഫെയർ പ്രൈസ് അഷുറൻസും കൂടാതെ ജെംസ്റ്റോണിന് ബൈബാക്ക് ഗ്യാരണ്ടിയും ഉണ്ട്. ഇപ്പൊ നിങ്ങൾ ആലോചിക്കുന്നത് എന്താന്ന് ഞാൻ പറയട്ടെ. എനിക്ക് ഒരു ജ്വല്ലറി കൂടെ വാങ്ങി തരട്ടെ എന്നല്ലേ?
Malabar Gemstone Jewelry Festival, a celebration of precious and uncut jewelry. Malabar Gold and Diamonds.